Thanks very much, and thank you for coming so early to a talk that I thought was going to be a real snooze. I was like, nobody's going to come to this. But I'm really passionate about documentation. I have become in the last few years. It's actually not the full, I exceeded the character limit of the title. The full title is actually How I Learned to Quit Whining and Love the Dogs. It has been a long process, but today I'm going to talk, this is actually on my computer. It's on my computer here. What is documented shall never die. And this is in 3 parts. First of all, I'm going to tell you, first part, I convince you that documentation is part of design. And then I show you a case study, which is a documentation suite that I made for a product called Gliss. And the third part is where you end up so excited to write docs when it's definitely not your job. So my name is Astrid. I have done a lot of things in the audio industry, primarily in design. I'm currently, you can ask me after the talk what I'm doing now, but the most important thing is that for 9 years, I was the founding designer of this brand, Bella. And as a founding designer, everything's your problem. Everything outside of engineering is your problem. And so you have to learn how to do a lot of things that you never really anticipated doing and do them well and make it look like you've been doing it your whole life. And Bella is a brand that has multiple products, many products. It's this embedded hardware system for ultra-low latency audio and sensor processing. Just released a new version, multi-channel, 10 in, 10 out. Got to get on that. There's also these modular products and a family of touch sensors. So a lot of stuff. But today I'm just going to talk about this, which was our 3rd modular product called Gliss, and it is a touch controller for modular synth. And Gliss is a beautiful product. Really, so much amazing engineering went into this product, and so many hopes and dreams. And it lights up, but there's no real interface except for that light strip. And so when we were going to release it as a product, I said, there needs to be documentation. Everyone, yeah, definitely needs to be documentation. And of course, that meant Astrid, write the documentation. Did I know how? Not really, but I'm a pretty good designer, so I was like, I can probably figure it out. We'll see how that went. So part 1, I just want to talk about sort of my design philosophy and how I approach documentation. And I am not a professional doc writer. Is there any technical writers in the audience? No, I feel safe. Thank you. Oh, somebody goes, please step out. So really, I mean, I'm talking about this because probably most people are in my position, which is you make a bunch of products, you know that you need docs, but you really don't know what you're doing. So I'm sharing my adventure because maybe it will help someone else. But the first thing I want to impress upon you is a philosophy that I hold very deeply, which is design is a practice of care. That's really what it is. And it's caring about a lot of things. You're caring how a person feels when they use what you make. The stress of a steep learning curve. You're caring about the cognitive load of learning something new, what it feels like when you need information, you can't find it, how it feels to be an outsider in a field of knowledge, how someone who has an old version feels learning new stuff, what it feels like when you're expected to have knowledge you don't have, what it feels like to mentally give up, how it feels when someone spends money on something and has expectations, and how it feels to really love a tool. You're caring about all of these things. And people say to me, that's just UX. And I will die on this hill because it's care. And if you're offloading anything about care to only your UX designers, you have to have a conversation with yourself. And I think that this is what design is. And we're all doing design. Engineers are doing design. We know this. Some of us are doing it like primarily, but everybody is doing design. And if you're designing, it is a practice of care. And caring does matter. People respond positively to care. Have you ever opened a box and went, because you just felt that somebody designed this really well and you're like, yes, it's a wonderful feeling. People feel affinity for care. They feel affinity for products that, care about them. Learning something new is a huge cognitive ask. And I think as audio product developers, we forget this, that just because we find the intricacies of compressors intuitive and old news, that doesn't mean that every person approaching these products feels the same way. So there is a huge cognitive asset we're constantly asking people to invest their time, their brain power, everything. And people remember these experiences. And I think we want to be a little bit capitalistic about it. People buy the things they like. People talk to each other. That's a big one. And the world is full of complex, badly explained things, and well-explained things stand out. And I think that's true in every industry. And there is one thing in documentation that, I don't know, what do you call it, a bugbear? And that is the phrase, RTFM. And don't get me wrong, as some people have, said to me about the GLIS manual, they're like, oh, I wish you would explain blah, 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 page 28. But this is a churlish way to approach documentation. Because if somebody is asking you questions and you think the answer is obvious, it's probably a clue that it's not so obvious. So this kind of like, well, if you just read it, no, you've got to up your documentation game. And I think this is a fun exercise. Find something that's similar to what you make or work on. Learn to use it by reading the docs. And you will learn another universal truth doing this, which is hell is other people's documentation. But I say that, I think it's a good line, but that's not always true. There are some beautiful documentation. There is beautiful documentation in the world, so much of it. And if you're new to this world, go and find documentation that you truly love. Anyone ever read the Buchla manual, this one? What a treat. It's so well written. It's so beautiful, so concise. Anyone know the MNT reform? It's like an open source laptop. MNT, pay attention to this guy, Lucas. Oof. What a genius. And his manual is a thing of beauty. Designed by 100 Rabbits, those two people that live on a sailboat somewhere. Just an amazing achievement of documentation. I also want to give a shout out to service manuals. Anyone ever read a service manual? You ever had an old piece of hardware and dug through the archives and you're like, I bet there's a service manual. Last year, a friend of mine has an HS60. It's a Roland Juno clone. And there was a problem with one of the voices. There's a lot of distortion. And she was like, I don't really know what to do with it. And I was like, well, I bet there's a service manual. Do you want to try to fix it? So we went on this big adventure to find out what was wrong. And the service manuals. These service manuals are really for service people, but they're available. And the thing about these service manuals is they tell you everything. You want the parts list? You got it. You want the block diagram? No problem. You want the entire anatomy of these electronics? You got it. Everything is in there, and it's wonderful. And I think there is this idea that somehow you need to hold something back, and I think that service manuals are this, and yeah, it's a different time, different point in the industry. But I think that service manuals are a great thing to look at. They're very easy to love. And I think that it also bears thinking about, why are good docs so rare? Because we all know documentation is especially in audio products. We've all read that manual or the lack of a manual, which is more common. And why is it so rare? And I think that, especially in music products are complex. This is the whole thing about why design is kind of hard. These are just complex products. There's a lot. And so explaining them is a real task because companies are scared of people stealing their super secret ideas. That's another one. There's a lot of excuses made for a lack of documentation, especially small teams. Well, we don't really want to tell people. Because people reading them understand things in different ways. It's hard to reach everyone. That's also, that's just part of the territory. Because explaining things well takes time and effort because people don't bother, don't think it's important, or won't pay for it. That's actually the big one. That's the big one. And so I think this is my position statement on documentation and why I think it's such an important part of the design process. And I do think that docs inform design. And what I learned through the process of doing the GLIS docs was it's a very, very powerful tool for the design process. So let me tell you about it. So this is the case study, GLIS. From 2008 to 2011, I had a job in London, and that job was explainer. I was an explainer at the Science Museum. I've got something caught on my microphone here. I explained rocket science to children. And what a great trial by fire that was. Because you know who won't let you off the hook? 10-year-olds. You know who really wants the correct answer? 10-year-olds. You know who doesn't care you had a heavy night last night, you're really not there for it? 10-year-olds. And so this was a brilliant, really, that was where I think, and this is, I think, weirdly, the job that really solidified me as a designer was understanding that you're always trying to tell somebody something, and that all of these things, the world communicates in many ways, and there's direct communication, implicit communication. So this job was very important in the history of what I do. But then 2013, oh my God, what year is it? 2024, 24, we released Gliss. And it was a touch controller for modular synth. And I had to figure out how I was going to make this documentation. So I was like, I bet I can explain it. So here we went. And these were the requirements. Had to explain everything it does. Does anyone here have a Gliss? Hey, some people do. It does a lot, doesn't it? So much. It must be light on detail, yet heavy on detail. Audience is not necessarily technical. If you are in the modular synth world, I want you to read that sentence again, because there's a kind of assumption that a lot of modular synth creators have, because they're very technical and really understand DSP, that the modular synth audience does too. Not necessarily the case. And it must always explain how it fits into a synth setup. That was also very important. So that was kind of the brief. So there we go. And the first thing I realized was, I'm going to have to use words, and they're all going to have to be in order. And this is very different than like showing somebody something where you can just and it does this and kind of, rat-a-tat-tat around the facts. No, you have to be systematic, and you have to really get down with what you're saying, find a way to explain this in a way that's clear, in a way that hits. Ooh. So there's this quote that I love. It's more fun to talk with someone who doesn't use long, difficult words, but rather short, easy words like, what about lunch? Does anyone know what famous person said this? No? Winnie the Pooh. And I think this is a brilliant phrase to really, when you think about documentation, there's no prize for the most complicated words. There's no prize for the most in-depth explanation. There is, however, the prize for clarity. And this is really, I think, this is sort of a chart that I made at the beginning where I was like, okay, who, the format, the context, and the purpose, and thinking, what is it that I need to focus on here? Because there's a lot of competing sort of things. And through this process, I don't know, spoiler, this is really the most important part. What do they know and what do they expect? This was like the kind of unifying thing, and that's going to be different for every product. And but that really, if you need to take away one thing, maybe two or three things, that's one of them. And this is another thing, I don't know, I've got you all here today. It's my 40 minutes soapbox time. There is no user. And you might notice if you come to my talks, if you read my writing, if you know me at all, I never use the word user. I don't believe in it. I don't believe it's a good word. I hate it. Because there has never been a user for music. There has never been a user for art. This is a holdover from HCI kind of nomenclature, and I don't believe it's a useful word. And it's not a useful word when you're thinking about communication. What are useful words are things like learners, creators, musicians, explorers, customers. And each one of these words is a way of looking at the people who are interacting with your product or whatever it is that you make. And when you choose a few of these words and look at those people through this lens, then the style of communication becomes a lot more obvious. If I say, well, the user wants blah, 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 the customer wants blah, blah, different tenor, isn't it? So yeah, that's just my big bugbear. I hate the word user. Fight me. But I do think that it really bears thinking about, what are people doing when they're using your thing? Are they musicians? Well, then think about them as musicians. And I think that was one thing with the synth module. I was like, okay, we've got to think of this from a musician's perspective and speak to people as if they're musicians. Are they engineers? Great, that's another method of communication. And I think this is really a way of focusing what you're trying to say, because that's the thing with documentation. Yes, technology is a language. Language is a technology. The same way that electricity is a technology. You could do a lot of things with electricity, can't you? Yes, we're all products of that. So this is the kind of thing that I started to get at with this. So I'm going to go through a few things that worked for me. Somebody who did this, and it wasn't her job. Consistent nomenclature was the first thing. And consistent nomenclature, we had, Gliss has 4 modes. And during the development process, these were called direct control, gesture record, signal processing, and expressive keyboard. And when I started writing the docs, I was like, these names suck. So we did a lot of thinking, and we were like, okay, direct control becomes control. Gesture record, record. Signal processing, signal. Expressive keyboard, notes. And that was it. And then everything became very punchy, and you could think about these modes and these 4 modes in a very clear way. And the other thing was, this is the interface, and we had to have very consistent ways of speaking about every part of this interface. And so top output and bottom output, we went on and on about this for ages, which was, is it A and B, is it 1 and 2, da-da-da-da-da. No, top, bottom. Because, I'll get to it, but spoiler, it's reversible, so that was useful. Also, that's the input. There's only one input. That's the button. It's only ever called the button. It's not the switch. It's not the clicker. It's the button. This is the touch strip. Very, very consistent about that. This isn't the surface. No, it's called the touch strip, and that's the only thing it's ever called. And then, you see, what happened was we released this, we crowdfunded it on Crowd Supply, and we sent out a survey which said, do you want the jacks at the top or the bottom? And people went, absolute 50% split of like, I want them at the top, and it's very important. Or I want them at the bottom, it's very important. So we ended up delivering it with 2 like reversible faceplate. And so top output and bottom output, I mean, you don't have to think about it. When you reverse it, you don't have to say, well, one's on the bottom. No, top output, bottom output. You know where the orientation is. If you're holding your synth upside down, that is outside the scope of my abilities. So the other thing that I found very useful was consistent structure. And, you know, maybe this is obvious to everybody, but these were kind of revelations to me. One thing that in writing this, and actually writing the words of this manual, a thing that I kept falling back on was this structure. Tell them what, tell them why. This is probably the other thing that if you take anything away from this, this is useful. And when you constantly tell people what, and then you tell them why. For instance, slew rate allows you to customize how quickly a signal rises and falls when you start or release a touch. This feature means that you no longer need an ADSR module to create custom attack and release for your touches. You can set it right within Gliss. By the way, I had no LLMs. That's my M dash. You know, I meant to, actually, this occurs to me, I meant to put an LLM, we'll get there. But anyway, back to my point, I do have one. First, tell them what. Tell them what you're telling them about. Slew rate, tell them what it is. And I find this in manuals all the time, is all of this explanation of what something does, and you haven't told me what you're talking about. So tell them what, tell them why. This was like something that really was galvanizing in these docs, was what, why, what, why, what, why. And if any of those are independent of one another, why is that? So this was a really, really useful structure. And this is also where docs and design started to feed into one another. At the time that I was writing the docs, it was like putting the track down in front of the train because engineering was still going on, and it was a fraught time. But what did happen was that when I was writing the docs, there started to be really good feedback for design. For example, if something was absolutely impossible to explain, maybe it was a bad design choice. And so there was a lot of kind of refinement of what was going on where I was like, this is repetitive, this doesn't belong here, this doesn't feel right, this isn't. So this, I can't really explain how useful it is to have docs going through this process. And for the subsequent product that we made, I insisted on docs being done at the beginning, document everything. And even if that's just nomenclature, but it really is a galvanizing thing. And I found that this feedback loop was really, really important. And it did make this product a lot better at the end. And the other thing that I think is very important is consistent and appropriate voice. Does anyone remember this? Pink trombone. Not the voice I'm talking about. I just thought it was a funny picture. So the Bella voice is something that I cultivated over many years. I was, nearly a decade. And the Bella voice had 3 features, and that was, it was friendly, it was approachable, and it was credible. And those things always in balance, because you don't want to like pander to people. You don't want to be condescending. You don't want to be patronizing, but you don't want to be jargony and like pretentious. But everything you say technically has to be credible. So this was always something that I had already been cultivating. And there was a few things that I had banned from the Bella nomenclature early on, including the word user. And it's terms like, it's easy, you simply, you just. Because you may think it's simple, you may think it's obvious, you may think it's easy, and somebody who has never seen your product before, doesn't care as much as you do, and is being confronted with this for the first time. It's not easy. And telling them it's easy when it's not easy for them, not a good look. So this was just a few things that I banned from the Bella voice. I mean, I don't know. I was a founding designer, I could do what I wanted. And I think that there's this kind of, I realized during this process that you're always operating in one of three modes when you're writing communication, you're writing documentation. And that is you're informing, you're educating, or you're inspiring. And informing is you're telling people how it works. This is the voltage range, this is how you set it. You are educating them, here's how to use it. Enter into the voltage range, you do this, you touch that, you slide this thing up and down, here's the colors, how you actually operate it, or you're inspiring them, which is here's why it matters. And I think that in product communication, these three things, and always understanding which one you're doing, is really important. I find that when I read documentation, a lot of very confused documentation seems to not know which one it's doing. So I think that this has been like, this was just something that I kind of fell upon after doing it for a long time. And I found this to be really, really galvanizing. And also consistent visual language. The first thing that I produced was a 60-page PDF all about the completely documenting every function of Gliss. And I developed a bunch of visual cues for it. For example, every chapter says which mode number it is. It has a title in the mode color. It has a tagline that is a simple summation of what the mode does. It has a kind of a blurb paragraph. It has a diagram of exactly what that mode's menu looks like. It goes into the settings selectors. And the settings selectors have a very consistent color order. And also, in every chapter, all diagrams are in that chapter's color. And there's always something at the top which tells you where you are. And the PDF was the first thing that I did. And this kind of consistent style, the visual style, really carried over into a lot of things. I started to expand it. Like, after Superbooth, the first Superbooth that we did with Gliss, somebody said, you know what I didn't even have the full manual yet. They said, you know what I really need? I really need a cheat sheet. So I was like, oh, great. So at the end of the manual is a cheat sheet. You can fold it together in this cute little pamphlet, keep it beside your synth. Hey. And what it does is it gives you this very concise summary of what everything, all the menu functions that all the mode menu functions of Gliss that you can keep beside you. But I have breaking terrible news. And that is, you probably need more than one format. And documentation work is never done. And often that format is YouTube. And so when I started looking at video manuals, because that was like basically as soon as the PDF manual was done, it was like, turn around, do the video. So the video manual, I took a lot of cues from Chase Bliss. You guys know Chase Bliss? Yeah, they're great. And they're so nice. They're just like the best eggs. And I love these video manuals. They're beautiful, they're calm, there's just a lot of nice things about them. They're very clear. And you can see everything that they're doing. Love it, great. So I was like, okay, what am I gonna do for the Gliss manual? Quality of this isn't very good. I had to do a screen recording, so bear with it. But what that is doing is, you see here, we've got something visualizing what the recorded gesture is doing. You can show plugging in things. It's very demonstrative. I also had my hands with a really good manicure in it because, believe it or not, there are ladies in the synth industry. I know. All of us can fit in my living room. Now, this is signal mode. And I mean, it's a slightly bigger living room every year, but the signal mode, this was a really important thing because I kept thinking to myself, the signals themselves are very important, and you can tell people what's happening, but how can I show them? And that's a Mac, like a iPad Mini that I got from somewhere. And what that is there is behind the signal thing there's a bell pepper, and everything is running into that pepper, which it's our programmable module. And it has a Bella behind it, and that Bella, basically what I'm doing is I'm connecting to the IDE of that Bella over Wi-Fi, and I'm using the oscilloscope. And so I was using Bella's oscilloscope to visualize all of these signals, and it made all of these explanations so much easier, so much clearer. And that was, total pain in the ass, but really, really useful for the clarity of what you're actually doing with these signals and why they're interesting. And also, because I'd really invested in the consistent visual language of the manual, I had a consistent visual language for the video. And keeping all of this absolutely consistent was really, really useful. And here again, we've got a wave shaper, which is really hard to explain. But I was able to use this beautiful signal visualization to really show everybody what was going on. And yeah, that was, it was difficult, I'm not gonna lie. A video manual is a lot of work, but I feel that not everybody's gonna read a PDF, not everybody's gonna watch a video. There has to be these continual methods of offering ways into your product, because you do all this fabulous engineering, you do all this beautiful design, you have to give everyone a way to care about it and love it and understand it. So I had a conversation last night with Jay in the bar, and I was so glad that I ran into Jay, because I said, Jay, I'm doing this documentation talk tomorrow, and he said, the worst documentation is a PDF. And I was like, but he's right. We said you can make it a website, and then it's accessible, then it's screen readable. Great. And he also gave me this really good tip, which is your YouTube description must be able to be found in search. And so this is the kind of thing that, a video manual is great. There's sound, there's explanation, there's all kinds of things you can put in a video manual that is above and beyond just written form or just visual descriptors. But I didn't know this until less than 24 hours ago. So, Jay, thank you. And again, the accessibility is just raising the level for everybody. I also, as soon as I was finished this, and I was like, version 2 came out. I think it was 8 months after we released version 2 of the firmware. And version 2 had tons of new features. So version 2, and any kind of product that lasts for any amount of time, you're eventually going to have to add to the documentation. It means you have more features alongside existing features. Differentiation between the two versions. What if somebody has a version they haven't updated yet? Oh my God. And pathways from one version to the other. You got to explain that. And also how to upgrade. But what I did already have was this consistent visual language and this way of explaining things, which lent itself really well to explaining the 1U version. Because basically, just all that nomenclature fed into design, this is how we're going to do it. Although we call those out 1 and out 2, I wanted to call them left and right. You got to pick your battles. But the other thing was we had to remake I had to remake the entire manual and somehow add in all the really good new features. So what I did was added them to the existing thing, but always marked them as new, and the differentiation between version 1 and version 2. I don't know, how much time do I have? I'll tell you a funny story. So down here in the bottom of the gliss, it's blue, right? It was supposed to be white. And what happened was, 5 days before Gliss was to be released, we got the PCBs back because the faceplate is PCB and the light shines through the PCB. And we got the PCBs back, over 1,000 of them, and realized the manufacturer had used a type of PCB that filtered blue light. So we had to remake the entire color system. And because the question was, do we throw away all these PCBs or do we deal with it? And so if you have a gliss that is blue at the bottom, special edition. You no, if it's white at the bottom, I think it was. I can't remember. Anyway, but what that did was it actually really galvanized this color system. If you are red-green colorblind, I mean, we can have a conversation about that. It was a very unfortunate thing. The colors were very, very different. And it was that kind of manufacturing that made us rethink the whole color thing and made all the color language very, very consistent, very small, which did in the end help a lot. And the other thing that I really like to do with documentation is show, then tell. And on the Gliss upgrade site, where you upgrade from version 1 to version 2, if you have a Gliss, you should definitely upgrade because I'm very proud of that workflow. Super easy, takes 10 seconds. And the first thing you have to do is you have to plug in your Gliss. And I had recorded this video, another great manicure, of myself plugging in the USB cable because I thought to myself, nobody uses this out of the rack. Everyone's got it in their rack. And if we say plug in USB, where the hell's the USB port? And so I said, all right, I'm going to film myself. And one of my colleagues said, do you really think people need to know that? And I was like, listen, I think this is important. The thing that people have mentioned to me the most is, thank you so much for that wonderful demonstration. And it's a 2-second GIF, just showing people where to put it in. Show them what you want them to do. You can tell them, but showing is so powerful. And speaking of showing, the number of diagrams that I made for this manual is off the chain. And what I did was I just had I made an SVG and then was able to churn these out. But the number of diagrams, everything that you can do with Gliss has a diagram in this manual. And believe me, if I could have done it any other way and saved myself a lot of aggravation, I would have loved to. But I do think that sometimes the aggravation really is worth it to be able to show rather than tell. And the other thing is, you really got to cover everything. And I always go back to these service manuals and how nothing was left unsaid. And there's something really beautiful about that. And I think we give ourselves a lot of excuses with documentation, be like, oh, well, is it really that important? You know, maybe people should just be able to vibe it out and just, feel it out and just whatever. I mean, maybe your customer base is like that, but more often than not, it's not. And being obtuse isn't mystique, it's just annoying. And unless it's that very small subset of your customers who just want to vibe it out along with you, but mostly it's just annoying. There's nothing to be gained by under-explaining things. There is an art to explaining things in a way that's digestible, but leaving things off the table or whatever, there's no heroism in that. You're just making excuses. So I do believe that you really have to entirely explain. So part 3 is where you end up so excited to write docs when it's definitely not your job. It's just some takeaways. The biggest takeaway, I think, is that docs are a product design opportunity. It's part of the product design process. And if you're not engaging with docs, then, I mean, that's a deliberate choice. But this is an opportunity for product design, and it also feeds back into the design of the actual products. When you start to explain it, you realize how nutty some design choices are. So I think this is an important takeaway. Takeaway 2 is keep your reader firmly in mind. Who are they? What do they do? And the thing is, everyone wants to I'll just hire someone to do the docs. You actually are the experts in your own product and your own customer base. I mean, unless you're working for a massive company, but small producers, you're the person that should be writing the docs. I know it's annoying, I know it's hard, but you can keep the reader firmly in mind better than anybody. Did I skip one? Yeah, there we go. Let the documentation process inform design. That means that starting it at some point before the product is done, really, really useful because you find out a lot about a product. It's like, anyone here went to art school? You have to do life drawing classes in art school, and they always say, and everyone's shit at it at the beginning, except the little genius in everybody's class. It makes everyone feel bad. But your teachers always say that learning to draw is learning to see. that when you draw things, you start to really understand what you're looking at, and documentation is exactly the same way. As soon as you have to explain something, you start to understand it. Be intentional with your terms, your nomenclature, and your voice. These are your design choices. You get to decide what the terms are. You get to decide what you call things. You get to decide how it's explained. All of these are design choices. They're all opportunities. And one thing that I think is a brilliant. When I was a kid, my father worked in manufacturing, and he was really into this guy called Phil Crosby. And Phil Crosby was this guy who was a manufacturing philosopher, I guess, and he had this whole thing about quality. And so my father was part of the Phil Crosby School of Quality Assurance. And Phil Crosby's big quote is, "Quality is free, but it's not a gift." And that has stuck with me ever since I was a child. I love to say open source is free, but it's not a gift. Thank you, Phil Crosby. And I do also believe documentation is free, but it's not a gift. It doesn't cost you anything. You don't have to hire somebody. But it doesn't mean that you just get it for free. It doesn't mean it's easy, but it's a very, very cost-effective way to increase the traction, understandability, apprehendability, and purchasability of products. So, yeah, I don't know. If my dad ever watches this talk. And the other takeaway is more docs are coming. There's always another version. There's always something that you left out. There's always going to be like legacy docs. There's always going to be expansions. So more docs are coming, and you just got to get ready and be cool with it. And the last thing is, documentation is free, but it's not a gift. But it is a gift to your customers, to the design process, and to your future self. I go back to the GLIS docs all the time for not only what does that do, but also thinking about how I explain things and thinking about voice is all, and they're such a gift. They are a gift, not to you, but to everyone around you and to your future self. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you very much. If you want to see some of my work, QR code is there.